Welcome back to the channel, lads and ladies, and today we're going to cover a discussion channel that I've opened on my Discord. We are discussing technologies that would be cool or interesting and could possibly be implemented into War Thunder. Now, these are not specific vehicles, but more weapon systems and different kinds of tech that could become mechanics in the game and might be kind of fun to experience. So with that, we'll get right into the discussion. Wait, say that one more time.
Hey guys, welcome to Toshio's ASMR video. You have called 104.4. This is Dumbass Channel.
Okay, that's a perfect way to start this video. So, welcome back to the channel, lads and ladies.
Oh, it's actually recording.
And here we're going to be, yes, recording live, but probably lots of editing, so thank you guys. And we're just having a laugh with the guys on the Discord. We're dreaming about technology that could come into War Thunder someday. It might be kind of cool. So, let's see. Toshio Thunder started this one. Great guy. I really like him. And first thought was by 10 Thoughts. He said Tier 7 equals might be a cash grab. So, cash grab as a technology is already in War Thunder. Moving on. I'll start things off with the laser target designation. Vehicles equipped with LTEDs could spot targets for aircraft or even guide in smart bombs. And so wouldn't that be cool to see an actual laser ping in your HUD from an airplane of a ground vehicle that's lighting somebody up, and that would alert you to their position. You could lock weapons onto it, stuff like that. Thoughts?
That would be interesting, but it might take away from gameplay the fact that you can literally just say, yes, I want to hit this, and then a guided bomb will go in and blow it up. Not exactly skill required to do that.
That's not a good idea in my opinion. It's too easy.
Maybe for tanks guiding in smart bombs, it could work as like an alternative to ATGM vehicles. So instead of ATGMs, you could have the opportunity to guide in a smart bomb.
Yeah, but most... What? Yeah, wait, okay, yeah, so most of the laser-guided weapons are also coming from aircraft, so it's like laser-guided by troops on the ground, and then, you know, an aircraft drops a bomb, and is the point.
All I would say is imagine this. Instead of, for example, a helicopter sitting out the back, which still requires some level of skill to guide to a target, just do that, but where the person in the heli clicks on a target, and then the missile goes and hits it without any problem.
That's too OP in my opinion.
It's just too simple. You have to have some kind of challenge in any weapon you have in the game. You have to have some kind of learning curve, but you barely have any kind of learning curve in that weapon. It's just point, shoot, kill. That's all it is. It's gonna piss people off.
Okay, but isn't top tier APDS already like a laser beam? So it'd actually take longer for that, and the coordination of two players as a balancing factor. We're talking top tier, of course.
Well, I don't have that much experience with top tier, trust me, so I can't really keep up with the argument when we talk about that, but, well, yeah, you have definitely a fair point, right?
Yeah, and it could definitely be a cause for some salt. Let's go ahead and move on to something that I didn't bring up.
For the APFSDS, it's still a normal guided shell. It's not laser guided and things like that.
It can still, it can still be messed up if you hit the wrong point.
Yeah, and it's quite the APFSDS. I don't have much experience with them, but you can easily bounce them on angles, so it's not the easiest shell to use.
It's not a guaranteed kill.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not like a laser guided bomb or something like that coming from an F-15 or, you know, things like that where they're just you can't avoid them.
Yeah,
even flares won't do things.
Fair analysis.
Remember, for stuff like the Hellfires, they're fairly hard to guide in on moving targets, and I think that laser-guided bombs would work much the same way. I mean, sure, you would have increased accuracy, but it's still not a guaranteed hit.
Yeah, there'd be an input lag between the bomb adjusting its course, and you couldn't just, like, follow a moving target. It would have to be something fairly stationary. So if it did come to the game, there'd be some ways to balance it. It'd be a nice way of giving a real feedback to scouting, because right now scouting, nobody knows if they've been scouted.
The problem with it is in top tier tanks right now, there are so many types of technology where ATGMs, even bullpup guided missile, all those sort of things, which kind of are ATGMs, fair enough, but still, so many pieces of technology that you need to work out how to defend against when they're coming in at you. Just adding more tech that can kill you is just going to annoy the player base. You need to get to a point where you say that's enough things that can kill you.
That makes sense.
Also, there's another thing. I don't think there's a single vehicle that's specialized into laser guided rockets or things like that. They're mostly on troops. You need infantry for those types of weapon.
Yeah, it'd be good for a troop carrier like the IFVs
maybe
to have.
Well, is there any AFV that actually has that types of weapon?
Oh yeah.
Yes, there is. Yeah, most of them will have it.
Okay.
Maybe modern MBTs could get an active protection system.
Yeah,
well, that's the T14. The only one who has that is the T14 Armata.
Paul,
that isn't entirely true, though. To be
the
honest,
T90 has
let's talk about that.
Like jamming
So,
mechanism.
If there was an active protection system for, let's just limit it to, being able to stop chemical rounds, pre-detonate them, or whatever, however it works. How would it function in War Thunder? How would it be limited? How would it be balanced? And what impact would it have on top tier gameplay? Let's listen to Paul. You raised your hand. You get to go first.
Okay, so yeah, basically those types of weapon are automatic because you can't, when there's a shot coming, you don't have, the reaction to put it on. So it's automatic, and it's, I think, from what I know from, let's say, the Armata, it's a shockwave that just detonates the weapon before it hits the weapon before it hits the tank, and it only works like on each shells and things like that. So it's kind of borderline OP. It's at this point it's like even useless because there's already ERA that works like that practically negates the each shells, and I think it's just pointless to have.
Okay, Bacon, did you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, in my personal opinion, from my experience in top tier, which at this point, quite recently, I've been playing top tier a lot, I don't think it would actually change the meta all that much. The thing is, the APS, the active protection system, does have a limited amount of rounds it can fire off to destroy the incoming projectile, so they would eventually run out. And the thing is also, it's only against chemical rounds. Top tier, the meta is very much angled towards APFSDS, which is not a chemical round. So for the most part, most enemies you are facing, you would not actually be able to protect yourself against anyway. The only things is stuff like the stock Leopard 2A4, perhaps, that only has a Heat FS round. So that might be able to be protected against fairly well. But majority of top tier players will be using APFSDS, which isn't actually very good at sort of being stopped by the active protection system.
And I think that another way that we could balance it is have it be something that you have to replenish, kind of like you have to pay SL for ammo, have something that you have to pay it each time you use it to replenish that on your tank.
Okay, that all makes sense in sort of a balancing way. I think that I agree that if it's implemented in a balanced and fair way, it wouldn't make too much of a difference. It could be useful against things like the Hot Missile or other ATGMs, I think especially. It'd be a nice defense against them. Could it have dead zones? Those active protection systems do have some dead zones, and modeling those in the game could be a thing. And then, of course, balancing it economic-wise to have it cost you to replenish the system also makes sense. So, Butler posted, or he basically wanted to talk about bringing advanced targeting systems into the game. So as we know, the targeting reticle is very simple and pretty straightforward across the board for every vehicle or every tank in the game. What if we could have something like the point-and-click accuracy of a modern targeting computer for vehicles that had access to such a thing?
I don't think that would come across well to most sort of players who have built up to top tier at this point. Main reason being that you build up to top tier, you are getting good with the aiming system, you are becoming good at sniping, you are becoming good at close range. But then the problem is it gets to a point where some people will have tanks where they can literally say, yeah, there's a target over there, aim at the correct position, sort of countering all the wind, all that sort of stuff, and it will fire and it will hit the target as long as it's not moving too fast or anything like that. So it does come to a point where Gaijin have said many times they want skill and practicing to be good at something to still be a part of the game. These are the kind of things that would be added and sort of take player skill out of the equation.
Yeah, definitely gunner skill would no longer be such a thing. It'd be interesting to see it added into, say, a custom battle and just see what it does to the meta, to get a few top tier players and just have them point and click killing, because then things like positioning and even ammo selection could be widely changed. Imagine if you could land your HESH shell on the critical points of an enemy tank every time if they're standing still. That'd be an interesting thing to look into, just for curiosity's sake. Overall, I think that's just about the sentiment of the general public. Unless someone had a differing opinion, go ahead and light up your push to talk if you wanted to say something.
Well, I have something. It's like, in general, with this like new technology that could be implemented into the game, you have to take into the consideration the balancing, that you should limit the vehicles in a match, that you won't have like significant up tiers for vehicles which don't have like these new optics or whatever, so they'll be completely outclassed in an up tier. I really wouldn't like that to be something. So like limit the vehicles that can play in these games which have this technology to kill each other and also defend themselves.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And as we mentioned, Gaijin has already openly stated that they don't have plans to implement a system like this because that's the effect it would have. It would make certain vehicles have pinpoint accuracy under almost any condition, and others not have access to that. And what you would have to see is definitely such a BR gap between vehicles with advanced targeting computers that they never face anything that doesn't have it as far as an MBT. And that makes sense. So, moving on. Another suggestion from Butler, maybe new kinds of artillery options, and we can think about a lot of different things. There's currently no option to call in a smoke artillery strike, which could be incredible. Imagine if you could line out an entire line of smoke from cover called in by Artie, or even things like colored smoke for signaling aircraft, or air burst rounds to target open top vehicles, and I'm sure the list goes on with different types of Artie you could carry. Would you like to see that come to the game? And if it did, would you want it to replace your artillery option so you only have one, or give it to certain vehicle types? How would you like to see that implemented? Paul, you got your hand up.
Yeah, but basically, I think the best, type of artillery that could actually make a change or things like that will be, for, let's say, the Americans who have the AC-130 with the 120, I think the other one is a 90 and a 20 mil Gatling gun. That could make, a nice change for a more precise type of artillery strike. But in my opinion, like the artillery strike that we already have in game we don't need more. That's just my opinion, but I don't think we need more. But if we really need a new one, it will really be an AC-130 airstrike.
Okay, so you'd like to see it modeled as an actual object in the game, say an AC-130 is flying over the area, and you could call in a minigun strike or a high explosive strike, just depending upon what's available in the AC-130?
Yeah, well, yeah, basically, or maybe all of them, just, fire everything they have, and because this is usually what they do. If you see a video of actual artillery strike from those aircraft, they just put everything they can. They just fire everything.
Okay, KV2, you had something.
Yeah, about the smoke artillery option. I think so. In arcade, you get for vehicles that have unlocked artillery, there is a cooldown on when you can call in artillery. So for the smoke artillery, you'd only get the option to use it every once in a while. rather than at the same frequency as you would with normal artillery.
Yeah, I think the way it is with arcade is you get artillery strikes as a reward for kills, and I'm not sure if kill assists can get you point towards it or not, but if you could cash in like 2 artillery strike regular strikes for an improved strike, whether it be airburst rounds, greater saturation, or a smoke screen, I think that would give some flavor to arcade. And I don't play a ton of arcade myself, but I can see that not being too overpowered as far as how the arcade meta goes, just because people should be mobile anyway. Gadget, did you have something?
Yeah, I had an idea, like, as a type of spotting mechanism, it could almost be like an artillery strike that you point out in a map, certain points on a road or something, and where you point, it drops maybe like a signal flare or like red smoke in that certain area to signify maybe there's like enemy tanks or that. So they can be another kind of spotting you could have in the game.
Yeah, there's that's actually something that I've witnessed used is artillery flares, and that could be a really interesting thing to see implemented in the game. In something like an arcade setting, they could spot targets in the area on the map, which is not a huge change from how things are in arcade anyway. And in a realistic battle setting, it would definitely serve to highlight certain areas. Even lighting up shadowed areas can give an advantage, and it could give pilots an idea of the general location of enemy vehicles. Even during the daytime, if it casts something like red light, it could serve to highlight things nicely. So that would be interesting.
Yeah, maybe the cooldown for it wouldn't be similar to that of an artillery strike. Rather, it would be like spotting, so it's a shorter kind of cooldown for it.
Oh yeah, I see that in arcade you get artillery strikes for kills. What if you could get something like a smokescreen artillery or a flare artillery in return for successfully spotting enemy vehicles? That would be an interesting reward for spotting. All right, Paul, you had your hand up?
Well, yeah, basically, it's in a response to Mysterious. I think adding that will be kind of useless because we already have much better than this. We don't even have to spot them for, let's say, light vehicles. They can call in already an airstrike. You just point it, an airstrike, and the vehicle is practically almost all the time dead. They just added that not long ago, so I think it will render that mechanic kind of useless.
Are you talking in terms of the flying out an aircraft in arcade?
Just like why spot them for the entire team when you can already kill them? You don't have to wait for your team to do it. You can just do it right now.
Okay, I see what you're getting at there, and I think the obvious answer would be not everybody wants to play that aggressive style. Some people actually enjoy scouting. And Bacon, you had something.
Yeah, I just wanted to go in with a few things. First off, the previously mentioned smoke artillery strike. I think this could be very interesting. I think it could act just like normal smoke grenades, where to reload them, you have to go to a captured base or something and reload the sort of thing. It could just be another type of smoke grenade, in my opinion. That could work perfectly fine. So no issues with that. And as for an AC-130 or an aircraft-based artillery type system, I feel aircraft-based things should actually be left to the players. Maybe have those vehicles as playable vehicles that other players can have, and then maybe use sort of a scouting feature to give them idea of where to hit.
Yeah, that comes back to something, once again, the laser targeting thing, where it could just be a way of lighting up a target. I mean, could you imagine seeing in your HUD the flare of a laser hitting a tank down on the ground and it just lights it up like a laser pointer? That could be I'm just picturing that as very useful as a CAS pilot myself. So all these good thoughts, and if you had something, definitely my apologies. I'm just trying to move this along, but Gadget, you had your hand up, so go ahead and let us know.
Yeah, so as a counterpoint to what Paul said, The airstrike really works for if you have one enemy in the area. Let's say you're in an urban map, and there's this certain area, a bunch of enemy tanks are going around, they're flanking your team, and you spot them, you put down like the flare or artillery, you put the flare there. So, for example, in an evening or a night map, you can constantly have them seen. Even if after like one or two have been destroyed, it'll still be there. Maybe the flare could still light for another 30 seconds. So you and your teammates still have some kind of visual constantly on the enemies.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And just going from an aesthetic point of view, I played a game called, it was Armored Core something or other, and the Armored Core series is pretty famous. But one of the missions that I remember more than anything else was a night battle where you didn't have night vision, and you had to wait for flare artillery to launch their flares, and then all the enemies would be backlit by the flares. Very cinematic. I'd love to see something like that come to War Thunder, just for the look of it. So moving on, Pilot mentioned semi-active missiles, and this one might be kind of quick. Apparently they were available on the Phantom and the MiG-21, so this would be, rank 7 jet technology, and these would probably just be a more deadly form of missile when it all boils down in coming to the skies of War Thunder. Any thoughts on more deadly self-guided missiles?
Certainly, more deadly types of guided missiles can be added to the game, but I think it would need to be in collaboration with effective countermeasures for those missiles. Not just having the countermeasures, but having them available for, if not all, most of the things that they will be used to attack. Because if you have, for example, a highly advanced radar-guided missile and it's attacking things that have no way to counter it, it's a little bit unfair. So I have no issues with more advanced types of missiles being added, but as long as there is some kind of effective countermeasure, it's not really an issue.
Yeah, that makes sense. Paul?
Well, in my opinion, like, if we continue adding more and more modern things, at one point we're rightfully gonna hit, how can I put that into words? Like a non-returning point. Let's say if we take, for example, we had, let's say, new missiles for the F4 Phantom and things like that. Fine. After that, the problem is like the community. The community will will always like more, and then we're gonna hit a wall. Like if, let's say, we had the F-14, where we're gonna have to add the Phoenix missiles for sure. That are almost on. You can't avoid them. They're just gonna be too OP. My opinion on that is they're just gonna be too OP. You can't counter them.
Okay, so if they're realistically modeled, it's pretty much a missile is launched means you're dead kind of scenario. So that brings up the question of, do they need to be realistically modeled in the game? I think we've seen some ways that things are balanced in a gameplay way that don't necessarily reflect reality entirely. So that would definitely be a balancing act for Gaijin if they ever did come to the game. And again, this is future stuff, so we'll dream about that more specifically at another time. Gadget, you had something.
Yeah, I'm gonna back up what Paul said, because in my personal opinion, you can just hate me on whatever I say, but Gaijin's really, really going too far. I mean, at this pace, we'll be seeing 80s, 90s technology in the next year or two, and that's just going way too far. My own hopes for the game is that they go as far as possible with World War II and maybe 50s and 60s. And then after that's done, then they move forward. Then they start developing new stuff.
Okay, that's a fair sentiment, and I've heard that before. As you know, we have a helicopter from the 2000s in the American tree, so it's pretty clear that Gaijin is going as modern as they can, and I honestly think they're going to catch up to modern day tech with whatever's popular, and then hopefully they'll come back around and give some love to World War II, because there's a lot of room for that. Bacon, you had something.
Yeah, just to follow on from Paul, really. I just wanted to sort of say the point is this game. It's a game. It's not supposed to be a full-on simulator. So they can take missiles and they can sort of make them a bit unhistorical to make them fit the gameplay a bit better. And the thing is, as I said before, going to more modern, more advanced tech, in my opinion, it is fine as long as they introduce usable and effective countermeasures that can be used against them.
Well, yeah, but the problem with that is it's a community. If, let's say, we take, for example, the Phoenix, you can barely escape it. And if you can easily, like, if in game you can easily, skip the missile, the community is just gonna shit on Gaijin. They just gonna scream again because they want realistic things. War Thunder is selling by being one of the most realistic game on the platform, and this is their main selling point. If they don't do it, they won't sell anymore.
This is going to happen with every single game, though. Every single community is going to ask for more stuff. And the thing is, Gaijin have actually, initially with tier 6 jets, with infrared guided missiles, people were like, yeah, they're going to add them. They're going to be super overpowered. They might just not make them historical. In the end, they've made them historical, and they've made it so that tier 6 supersonic jets can actually fit very well against even stuff like the FJ4B, which technically, looking at the stats, should be nowhere near able to perform. So I think Gaijin will add more advanced stuff, and they will find a way to make it usable even when facing things that are far less advanced.
Yeah, fair point, Bacon, and it was a good example you brought up. I was actually very impressed. I don't play a lot of top-tier jets, but I've been very impressed with the way that they worked guided missiles into jet combat. It doesn't seem to be game-breaking, and yet it looks like a fun and engaging mechanic that gets you to learn something new. And for top tier, that's desperately needed, is just some new thing to do. So let's go ahead and move on. I like where this discussion is going.
Can I just last point for this topic?
Go ahead, Paul. Finish it off.
Okay. Yeah. The thing is, with those missiles, the early Sidewinders sucked. They were really bad, and a lot of people, a lot of pilots during Vietnam, from what I heard, lost their life because they were counting too much on them. So the thing is, the more we advance, the more precise the missiles are, the more dangerous they are, the less possible they are to escape.
Okay.
It's just you're just advancing, and in exactly like I said earlier, at one point you're gonna hit a wall where it's just gonna be overpowered.
Hi, baby. Okay, and that was the final word on that one. There's definitely more discussion when it comes to that topic. So we'll go ahead and move on to modern artillery vehicles. I think the key distinction with these would be they have just as much, if not more, firepower per vehicle than the World War II equivalents we already have in the game, and some of the other more modern things. But they also have advanced targeting systems. So when we're talking about advanced artillery, I'll go ahead and start this one off by saying I'd like to see advanced artillery in the game. I think it has a place, especially to deal with campers. And if you could just click on the map and have your gun aim to that map coordinate, I feel that would be realistic and balanced, because again, it's hard to tell exactly where on the map an enemy vehicle is, and having that plus or minus with the arty could be kind of fun. Thoughts? We'll start at the top.
I think I'll start with just saying, obviously a lot of in ground forces, especially realistic, if you look at the game from outside and you think, wait a minute, there's a game that's got tanks, anti-air vehicles, infantry fighting vehicles, all these things in one game fighting together, surely tanks specifically will be overpowered. But yet, in the game, they're not. It's fairly balanced. So I think modern artillery vehicles will, of course, be added in a way that will make them fair and possibly even able to be used just as self-propelled guns, which would definitely be entertaining to see. But generally, I think they could be added in a way that would make them fair, generally fun to play, engaging gameplay, something a lot of people enjoy. I think it would just be like a normal artillery strike. You fire a shot, and I will say, for once, I will commend World of Tanks on the way they have their artillery mechanic. in the short time I played World of Tanks a few years back, I did sort of mess around with artillery vehicles a lot, and the mechanic is actually not very overpowered, requires a bit of skill, and is actually rather fun and engaging to use.
Okay, Paul.
Well, I'm gonna say the contrary, because this is not how an artillery vehicle works. You don't just put a ping on the map and the gun elevates alone and just shoot perfectly. It doesn't work like that. You have most of the time, let's say, troops or vehicles on the ground that tells a position. Then you have the artillery vehicles in the back that just elevates, put the gun on the right angle, and shoot. This is how it works. So yeah, I'm absolutely not against seeing new artillery vehicles like, let's say, the 109 Paladin or things like that being added to the game. But they need to be used like actual artillery vehicles and shoot from, let's say, far range. And, let's say maybe have a better ping on the map, if you know what I mean. Let's say if we ping a vehicle on the map, there's a coordinate that's being, put on for artillery vehicles. They can just put the correct elevation and things like that and shoot, which will actually require skills and things like that. So yeah, just ping the vehicle on the map, ping the place you want the artillery strike to get. It gives coordinates to the artillery vehicles. They can aim at this point.
Okay, so you'd like to see more of the regular aiming system that's already in the game, but maybe with the ability for an artillery vehicle to get, we'll call it an azimuth, on a scouted target that they can then manually enter in. Alright, and then let's go with Puma. Did you have your hand up? And then Bacon, you had something to say as well after that.
Yeah, I think that the implementation of artillery vehicles would definitely tie in very well with what we were talking about before with spotting mechanics of flares launched from artillery, and then also it could also work well with the LTDS system. I think that would be a good way to implement this, at least at top tier.
Okay, and then Bacon, you had something, and then I see you Gadget too. We'll get to you.
Following on from Paul there. So one thing he mentioned was obviously teammates scouting a target for you, so you can then use your artillery. I do just want to say, teamwork in War Thunder, you do see it, but in every game, I don't think so. I think making sure a vehicle is implemented so it can be used effectively with a solo playstyle is the best way to go, because you're always going to have teams who either just don't want to teamwork or don't want to help you in that specific way. Even the current scouting capability, you hardly ever see that being used, at least from what I've seen. So having a vehicle that you can effectively use when playing solo would also be a good way to go.
Fair point, and again, that seems to come in line with a lot of the community, especially in the competitive area. And then Gadget, you had something to say.
Yeah, I would love to see like these new artillery tanks and everything. I'd love to play them, but the thing is that Gaijin has to rework how they use these artillery tanks. You have the Sturmpanzer II and everything. They're not really used as they should be. They're more used like SPGs and tank destroyers.
Fair point.
I think they should be. The Gaijin should rework the artillery tank like mechanism, so that I had an idea that maybe they had a different kind of view. So when they went into something like a binocular view, it would be like World of Warships. You got this wider view of the map. Not exactly that you have like the whole map, just a mini map there. You point your stuff there, you shoot. Rather, you have a wide shot of where you're looking towards. You would point your gun and shoot. It would be a bit more difficult, and it would not be as much of a brain dead idea as just look at the map, point your mouse there, click it, fire.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying there, and I think that we have a ranging mechanic in the game where you can find the range to a specific point. What if, again, this is a map thing, because I love my mini-map, what if you could hold down the map button as an artillery, or anything, and range find to a map coordinate instead of direct line of sight? because you should be able to estimate range that way. An artillery crew would do just that, and then your ranging skill would come into it. It wouldn't be any different than what we have, except you could click on the map to estimate range to a target point along that azimuth instead of just having to ping line of sight.
I think that would be a very interesting feature, actually. Considering that is how most real artillery systems would use it. One thing to keep in mind, though, is how would Gaijin implement the accuracy of that system? Because if you think about it, most artillery vehicles, it is a one-shot-at-a-time deal. So what you would have to do is make sure that that system is accurate enough that you do stand a fairly high chance of actually hitting the target. You could always implement a system where it requires a certain amount of skill and sort of being good at it to make the target a bit more accurate, or possibly even improve skill levels to improve the accuracy of the aiming of the actual artillery system.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And if we want to look at a current comparison, I got a toddler crawling on me and she pooped. I can smell it. I'm gonna be gone for a couple of minutes here real quick. But before I go, what we have right now with the spotting with the ranging mechanic works reasonably well. If you have nothing in your vehicle that enhances your range finding ability, you go off of crew skill, which can go out to, what is it, around 2 km with a differing accuracy and max estimate range based upon crew skills, which is, pretty fair. It works well enough and takes some time. And then you get things like the improved rangefinder, the coincidence rangefinder, and the laser rangefinder, which is the king of them all right now. So the equivalent for, say, an artillery vehicle, could it be something like a range-finding kit or some kind of like a simple range-finding kit? It's whatever for World War II era stuff. Then you get into things like GPS, and you could have pinpoint accuracy, as a module or whatever. But you guys have access to to the conversation now. I'm gonna open the floor for you guys to discuss things while I change a diaper, and then we'll get on to talking about more add-on armor options. We already have some add-on ERA. But when it comes to everything between a few of the World War II vehicles that see add-on armor, until we get to ERA with the more modern era, there's not a whole lot going on for add-on armor. So you guys can discuss that while I change a diaper. I'll be back in a couple minutes.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go now. So good luck changing your diaper. It's about it's nearly 1 a.m. I need to sleep.
All right. So, sleep tight, Gadget. Goodbye. Thanks for spending time with us.
See you, dude.
Good night.
Goodbye.
Yeah.
Good night.
Hey, Poopy.
I don't know. I don't see any problem.
I see you. I think addition of stuff like sandbags, extra tracks, possibly even making it customizable where you can place them yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
That could be really interesting. So individual
wooden trees, like on the Shermans and things like that. There's a lot of Shermans that have trunks.
But if you can individually customize your tank and place your sandbags, tracks in different places, that would just make it so different. Different players' vehicles would have different amounts of protection.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that would really enrich the sort of environment of games. You wouldn't actually be able to specifically hit one place on a vehicle and know it will kill them, because if armor's placed in different places, then just put tracks over the entire tank. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think.
Yeah, go for it.
Colonel Clink said it well. I think it was him when he mentioned stuff like camouflage netting as a modification to tanks, and then also stuff like darn, I forget their name, but the rails on the side of vehicles for RPGs and whatnot. I think that would be good. And then and then the ability to add tracks and all that, and maybe instead of having it be necessarily like a modification that you would research, have it instead be something like how you can add bushes to your tank in the customization.
Oh yeah, certainly. That would be cool. Yeah, if you can customize. I think thermal netting and sort of camouflage netting, I think if that was customizable and you could put it in certain places, that would be cool. Sandbags, all that sort of stuff could be cool. But another thing of additional armor.
Just put sandbags on the gun port of the Jumbo.
Yeah.
Another totally invincible.
Yeah, that would be that'd be a bit crazy, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Also, there's a thing I don't understand yet. Why can't we shoot the whole machine gun? Why is it not available yet? Like, just make it move with the
It's
gun.
the same with many other tanks. Like on the Grant 1,
Yeah.
it has 2 machine guns in the chassis. They don't fire. They're not even modeled. So
Yeah, like
And then
it's
also,
I
like
guess
on
it's just
Sherman's T-34s. You can't shoot them, but on the M6 you can. You
and
can't
then
shoot it.
I think for the stuff like the camouflage netting and the tracks that you could put on your tank and, maybe customization, that should be implemented as something like the special decals where you have to get X number of kills to access them, or like the tank camos.
yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
So,
That'd be
you can't really buy them with GE and
Or you make something more fun. Let's say if you want logs on the side of your tank, you need to destroy, let's say, you need to put down, let's say, 200 trees in game.
yeah, exactly.
So something
that's
funny like
easy. You just get a PE8 bomb of death and you just
no,
drop it
I
on
mean
the
with a
forest.
tank, of course, with a tank.
You just
shoot
get
it.
a KV2 and you just shoot a forest.
Panzer, Kaplang.
Yeah.
She got in her teeth.
Yeah, but that will be actually cool. Or let's say if you break enough tracks on, if
I
you
don't
track
think,
enough.
but then they would need to model something in game that counts that you knock down trees. That they
Yeah,
could do something.
that's not a problem. That's not absolutely not a problem.
Amounts of kills in a vehicle or
Well, no,
something
I
like
think
that.
I definitely think that having it be tied to amount of kills would be a lot better because, as Bacon Gaming said, something like the number of trees knocked down is really, really hard to implement, and that's also something that you can easily do with an SPAA or something like that. So I think that it really needs to be based on number of kills and maybe even something to do with crew level.
Yeah, but
Perhaps a sort of thing where it's like, oh yeah, you now have 50 kills in your Sherman. You can now mount sandbags on the front of the tank, or you can now mount tracks on the side or on the turret. So, something like that would work rather well, I think.
well, that will be a simple modification.
Yeah, and
Maybe.
and I think that it should be something that's tied to like how
The problem is, let's say, for the argument of just take an SPA and just fire on all the trees, who will do that? Who will be stupid enough to destroy 500 trees only to get
Why
That
would
doesn't-
you do that for
No,
extra armor?
that barely even makes it better than
That's
just
no
paying
skill.
with GE.
You could just
Yeah,
drive
exactly.
around. You could just drive around in a fast tank, just running over trees.
Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah, and I
it
think
just
that
will
a
be
good way
meta,
to
in my
balance it
opinion.
would be instead of having it where you can put just 10 of them if you get this number of kills, instead have it be if you get 20 kills and you can put one, if you get 50, another 50 you can put another one, and so on, going up exponentially so that it doesn't really become too unbalanced.
Because you become a forest.
Okay, well, I walked away to change a diaper and I came back to thoughts on the destruction of the forest. We better move on before these liberals come and hang me. Okay, so
Before the Lorax
Just
comes.
you.
all right, guys, let's finish this strong. I'm only gonna have time for, let's say, another 2 questions or so to cover. There's a lot of material to cover here, so I'll keep this channel alive and we'll keep dumping into it to see things to talk about. It's been really fun imagining what could come to the game and what kind of shitstorm would happen when it comes to balancing. So let's see, what's the next one?
I have a suggestion for if we do that. We can just, put suggestions that us in the chat have right now.
Well,
Let's say I made a suggestion, or let's say Puma made a suggestion. Just talk about them right now, so we can, not miss it for next time.
Okay, well the channel I'm referring to right there. Gaijin Please, Modern Tech. That text channel up at the top is where I've been pulling these from. So let's go ahead and cover a couple. Yeah, these 2 look good. Let's do aircraft spotting. Let's talk about being able to spot with a spotting system using certain aircraft. Could it be scout helicopters? Could it be scout aircraft? And let's see. Bacon, you had your hand up. You go ahead and go first.
I will start off by saying Gib SR-71. I think recon aircraft do sort of have a place in the game. That for ground force games or for air games. Reconnaissance type vehicles have been available from before World War II, after World War II, so you could have them throughout the entire age of the game. You could have basically reconnaissance Spitfires, the Germans have reconnaissance vehicles, all these sort of things you could have. So I think reconnaissance aircraft certainly do have a role in the game. Even ones specifically designated for marking targets have a role in the game. It would just be a case of making it so that using them actually gives the player a reward that would make them want to use them. If you get basically no reward, because most of these aircraft, bear in mind, have no weapons of any sort, so you would need to make it so that it's actually a vehicle people would want to play. Give them a reward that sort of adds up to the effort for actually using the vehicle.
Okay, so thumbs up for spotting mechanic for aircraft from you. Paul, you have something to say.
I think it could be interesting, but that's a huge but. The maps are way too small. Let's say if we take the example of Bacon with the SR-71. First of all, it wasn't used for tactical purpose, and second of all, it cruised at over Mach 3, so you will just zoom past the map without even seeing anything. So I don't think, and let's say if we take again the Spitfire, it's just going to be useless. You're going to spawn, you have no weapons, you have nothing to defend yourself, and you're just going to fly, spot two tanks, and then get promptly killed. Where, let's say if you use, let's say another Spitfire, let's say the Mark 9, you can just shoot a tank and it will spot on the map. We already have that kind of mechanic, and it's more useful because you can actually shoot down aircraft.
The whole point, though, there was that you would, of course, compensate the person using the airplane for spotting a vehicle with a fairly substantial amount of silver lines and research, because they could be in the game, they would suck, but if you compensate enough for actually completing a task, it might be worth using the vehicle.
I don't think it's worth the effort.
Okay, Paul. So, yeah, basically that is the tension we see between pure scout vehicles. The scout vehicles we see in the game, of course, already have the opportunity to do other activities like capture points and go into direct combat. And for pure scout aircraft, that would definitely be a more passive role and difficult to balance rewards between being worth your while and encouraging passive gameplay, which doesn't seem to be in the general interest of the exciting nature of War Thunder. Puma, you had something to say.
I forgot what I was going to say, so move on.
Alright, we'll wrap that one up. That's definitely a conversation for another time. Just how scouting can work for aircraft. I think that if you gave a scouting mechanic to an aircraft, there is a way to balance it if Gaijin decided to implement that. But let's move on to surface-to-air missiles. This is something that's probably coming to the game with the new top-tier AA that may even be coming out with the next patch. We'll have to keep looking at dev blogs to see. And to talk about surface-to-air missiles, let's go ahead and start off with Paul, so that Bacon can have a chance to contradict him. Go ahead, Paul.
We need them. We absolutely need them. ASAP. Because let's say we have stuff like the H-1Z, which are totally OP, which you can barely counter them except with aircrafts and things like that. Even aircraft now, because they have advanced sidewinders, they're kind of hard to approach. But yeah, I just think we need them, and they wouldn't be that OP, and will actually balance the aircrafts that we already have, with just the amount of destruction that they can bring on the battlefield or with the choppers. So yeah, if an aircraft can easily kill a vehicle on the ground should be able to easily kill an aircraft.
Okay, fair point. Let our SPAA, the way to do that at top tier, surface-to-air missiles. Bacon, your point.
Okay, so I know you expect me to contradict Paul. I'm actually going to say I agree. SAMs should be added. They would balance it very nicely. Getting into a bit more of how they might be implemented, though, Gaijin needs to tread a very thin line on not making them either too underpowered or too overpowered. If they're too overpowered, it will get to a point where the sort of meta in tank battles right now is switched around. Instead of helicopters, aircraft completely just ripping onto the tanks, it'll be the other way around. basically, if you go, you don't want it to be at a point where if you go in a helicopter or aircraft, it is a death wish. You do not want that. You want it to be equal and fair. Say you go in an airplane, you drop a bomb, you kill a tank, but then an enemy SAM carrying vehicle sees you, they fire a missile, and they stand a very high chance of killing you. I think that could be fairly equal. So as long as Gaijin treads that line very well and keeps it balanced, but also not too overpowered, I think they could be added and would work very well.
Okay, that makes sense. KV2, did you have something to say? I saw you light up for a while there.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think it, as far as implementation would go, SAMs would not be able to attack ground vehicles like, say, the Whirlwind can do quite successfully. So they wouldn't become just like so OP. They're basically a second ATGM vehicle that is also an SPAA.
Okay, fair point. Of course, we know that well, I shouldn't presume that, but historically, there are vehicles that have dual role missiles, and you would not like to see a basically fire and forget missile able to target ground units. Fair. And you would like to see those SAM missiles available for the anti-aircraft role, which for facing top-tier elements seems to be concluded by most of us as a pretty fair thing. Puma, you had something to say.
I think that we should implement these as something, well, actually, I think that these are really a natural progression in the game. If we're going to start getting tier 7 jets like, you know, the A-10, then we're really going to need something powerful to counteract them, and I think that a good way to do that would definitely be having SAMs.
Okay, yeah, that seems to be a pretty well-made consensus. We actually agree on some things. So, Paul, go ahead and make the final point, and then we'll wrap this up.
Yeah, well, basically, maybe, you know, make them a much higher tier with, so they can pair with aircraft that can actually counter them, you know, with flares and things like that. So they're not like overly overpowered, but you know, still actually usable. And yeah, just, you know, pair them with, let's say, F4 Phantoms and things like that actually have flares and can counter missiles.
Okay, fair point. And Gaijin has been saying that they intend to rework the current top-tier AA meta, which is radar-guided systems. I would personally love to see things like an alert that you are being targeted by enemy radar, which was available on certain types of aircraft. And we already see an alert for a heat-seeking missile launch, which is not strictly realistic, but simulates the pilot becoming aware that he's being targeted by a missile. So changes for radar-guided SPAA, and then some kind of at least a warning or some way to deal with being targeted by a guided missile from the ground does seem fair to pilots, and of course making that something that takes skill and the correct positioning would also be useful, because in my opinion AA should be effective against aircraft, because aircraft are just so effective against everything. And of course that's a topic for discussion for another time, which brings me into closing this out. Guys, it's been great talking with you, and I'll give you each a chance to sign off starting from the top. So Bacon, give us your goodbye.
World to Bacon, can you hear us?
I guess he can't, but I think that what he would say is subscribe to Bacon Gaming.
You know what? Go ahead and subscribe and hit that bell icon. Give him the old thumbs up, and go into Fiverr and tell him to pay VoiceOver Steve. Paul, say goodbye.
VoiceOver Pete, how dare you?
VoiceOver Pete, my apology.
I have returned temporarily. I gotta go. So
okay, say bye.
Thanks, though. It's been good. It's been good. So yeah, interesting points in the video. So give Toshio a sub. He deserves it. Thanks for hearing me out with some of my points that may be somewhat controversial. Anyway, though, thanks, and see you next time.
Later, Bacon. Paul, say goodbye.
Bye, I guess.
KV2, go ahead and say goodbye.
Subscribe to Tosho, or your RP games will be capped again.
Yeah, it's no less funny than it is true. All right, Puma, say goodbye.
Thank you for having me. It's been a very fun time. And for everyone watching, you should definitely subscribe to Toshio. And if we do another of these again, please keep in mind that Toshio always links his Discord in the description of his videos. You can go ahead and join. And even when it's not recording, Toshio will come and join oftentimes when we're in battle and come and play with us. So feel free to come on over.
All right, spoken like a true apprentice community manager, Puma. I look forward to, I think I have an interview with you sometime, don't I? Okay, anyway guys, catch you in the next video. Bye-bye.